I bought my 2021 Mercedes GLA in February of 2022. I was 1 month shy of going back into an office after working exclusively from home during the pandemic, and my 2014 Mercedes GLK, which I loved, was starting to have some issues that were going to be costly to repair. So I traded up to the GLA. I had done my research. I searched all over the Tampa Bay area for this particular model and year and found one at the Mercedes dealership in Clearwater. After test driving it, which handled a bit more sporty than my GLK and was lower to the ground, I spent the remainder of the day at the dealership completing all of the necessary paperwork to drive off in my new car. I absolutely loved everything about my GLA. I loved the ride, that starship-like dashboard infotainment center with the voice control. I simply had to say, "Hey, Mercedes," and speak a command, and a lovely woman would turn down my AC or look something up for me or change the ambient lighting. I love how she handled, and especially her blind spot sensors that would alert me to any car that was coming up in the lane next to me. She had all of the bells and whistles that I needed. But as I've mentioned in a previous video, she was expensive. I financed her for 72 months, which is the longest that I have ever financed a car before. And although I had a couple of grand in equity in my GLK, it wasn't enough to move the needle very much from that $42,000 price tag. So my payments were high, at least for me they were. I was paying $652 a month for this car. But man, did I love her, which was why it was so hard for me to part with her. I was driving Don nuts with telling him one week, "Okay, I'm ready to sell or trade her." And then I would flip-flop the next week and change my mind. And part of that wasn't that she was a Mercedes, it was because of her age and her miles. When I bought her, she only had 4,000 miles on her, so basically she was new, and I only put 16,000 miles on her in 3 years. So I knew her history, and I was diligent with her yearly maintenance. The thing that scared me with selling her and buying something that I could pay for in less than 6 months is that I knew I would have to get something older with higher miles. And I just couldn't wrap my head around that. It just didn't make sense to me financially at the time. But as Dawn and I have been on this debt payoff journey for like the last 18 months and saving for our future and possibly opening up our options beyond our original Mexico plans, we sat down one night and I stated, "You know what? I don't really want a car payment anymore." And that was it, really. That was the mindset shift that I needed. I needed to convince myself that it was okay to let her go in order to improve our financial situation. Once I made that shift, that really got the ball rolling on what kind of vehicle that I would like to get in her place and what we intend to use this vehicle for. And since I am exclusively work from home now, my driving habits have changed and I no longer need an expensive luxury car to run to the grocery store or take the pets to the vet. But my love of cars is deep and it goes way back to my teenage years. And my husband understands that this lady is not a Ford or Kia type of gal. And no offense if that's the brand and type of car that you drive. It's just not for me. And Dawn knew that I would be miserable getting rid of my GLA for something that just doesn't excite me. So the other thing is that our plans may be shifting, and I have another video dedicated to that I will post soon. So I needed to get something that would meet those needs as well, which basically means that I needed to get something that could be flat-towed. And when you flat-tow a vehicle behind something, it typically, not always, needs to be manual transmission. I also wanted to get something that I could either pay cash for now or be able to pay off in a few months so that I could focus on being credit card debt-free by December or January. And if you've been with me for a while, then you know that I have been clearing out my luxury purses and shoes and stashing some cash and paying for emergencies such as our broken AC unit. So I started researching the types of vehicles that could be towed. We wanted something small and fairly lightweight, so that ruled out any Jeeps as well as pickup trucks and larger SUVs, plus all electric vehicles. So I was then left with smaller options like a Honda Fit, a Ford Fiesta, a Chevy Spark, none of which sparked any joy in me. And then I came across the Fiat Pop and the Mini Cooper. Back in 2016, I actually owned a Fiat Pop. It was a cute little white car that I ended up getting some Gucci-like stripes added to her plain body. Fiat actually made a Gucci version of this car, but it was so rare to find one. So I ordered some vinyl stripes from Italy, made an appointment at a detail shop, and had them added to her. And it turned out pretty well. The issue with my Fiat is that I didn't take into account the manual transmission in stop and go traffic when I was commuting 4 days a week, 21 miles each way to work. Interstate 75 is almost as bad as I-4, and the constant shifting, it was driving me nuts. So I traded her 2 years later for my first Mercedes GLA. But by not having that commute, it opened me up to the possibility of having a manual transmission again. I learned on a manual transmission in my high school parking lot, and I've always been intrigued by the Mini Cooper. So I started looking around online at local dealerships as well as on car sites like Carvana and CarMax. And Don had a wonderful experience with Carvana when he sold his Jeep 2 years ago. It was a very smooth transaction. Don and I also established a budget of around $10,000 to $12,000. As I started down the search rabbit hole, I was finding a lot of your typical mini 2 and 4-door models like the Countryman, the Cooper S, and the special edition John Cooper Works, some of which were decked out with racing stripes and Union Jack decals and detailing, which were pretty cool. Don and I absolutely hate going to car dealerships. We hate playing the numbers game, the fake, let me go check with my manager game, the time spent in the finance and insurance office, just the whole experience. And seeing as how Don had a good experience with Carvana in the past, I thought, you know what? Let me get my trade out there, see what they're going to offer. I owed $19,000 on my Mercedes, and Carvana was willing to give me $23,200 trade-in value. And in Florida, trade reduces tax on the car that you're buying. So I switched my focus to Carvana. And at first, I put down a $100 deposit on a 2016 hardtop 4-door Cooper S with 72,000 miles on it. It was listed at $15,990, which was over our budget. But with my trade-in equity, it brought down the price to our budget. But seeing that my trade-in quote was only good for 7 days, and it took an average of 18 days for a pre-order to become available to purchase, the $100 just places you first in line to have the opportunity to purchase within a 24 to 48 hour window. I didn't want to take a chance of having my trade-in expire, putting more miles on my car, and possibly losing money in my trade. So I looked again the next day, and there she was. A hardtop Mini Cooper S coupe, or coupe as the Brits say. She had a clean Carfax, no accidents reported, and had service history, which included 2 owners. She also had very low miles for a car that is 12 years old, 58,000 miles, but she was located far away, further than my first pick, which meant a higher shipping fee. She was coming from Massachusetts, and it was going to cost me $1,500 to get her here. But she was also about $3,000 lower in price than the first Cooper that I picked, which even with the shipping fee and my trade-in, it put her well within our budget. I'm going to do a separate video on the whole Carvana experience because most of the research out there, especially on the shipping process, is from like 3 to 5 years ago. I'll also let you know if my mechanic found any issues and what it would cost to fix those issues. But for now, let me introduce you to my 2013 Mini Cooper S Coupe. Let me know what you think of her down in the comments and if I made a good decision. And if you have a Mini or if you bought from Carvana, then I would love to hear about your experience. Until next time, hasta luego, my friends.